So we're going to move to our first section today, where we are learning from Northern and Indigenous experiences. So rather than a unified panel for this, we have 3 segments in which we explore barriers, potential solutions, and policy recommendations that have and could contribute to a more inclusive and equitable future for the health and well-being of all disabled children living in Canada. We begin with a presentation on Jordan's Principle by Jennifer King of the First Nations Child and Family Caring Society. Jennifer holds a master's degree in social work with a focus on Indigenous methodologies and Indigenous perspectives on policy and practice. You can read more about her substantial accomplishments on the DWP Disability Without Poverty site, linked in the chat, where you can find our overall schedule and the bios of all of our speakers. Jennifer, welcome, and I'm going to hand it over to you.
So, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jennifer King. I am joining you this morning from unceded Algonquin territory, also known as Ottawa. So it is the afternoon here, and I am very pleased and humbled to be joining you. As was mentioned, my family comes from the Wissahickon First Nation. So I am Anishinaabe of mixed descent, and I've been very lucky to work at the Caring Society for about 10 years now. And during that time to have worked closely on something called Jordan's Principle, which I'm here to speak to you about today. Now, I will say that I am someone with privilege and am a learner, as was said. I'm a humble learner. The way I have failed to communicate in a manner that it works for everyone. Please, someone flag that for me. I would very much appreciate it. So I see in the chat that someone is going to share the slides for me, which I very much appreciate, because I'm always one of those people on Zoom who never knows how to share their screen, and it's always very embarrassing. So please, Michelle looks like is messaging me. If you would mind sharing, that would be very appreciated. In the meantime, while that's happening, I will say that I wanted to start actually with a little video about Jordan's Principle. It is a video, we call it the Jordan's Principle Public PSA, Public Service Announcement. And this one we actually had done with young people doing the captioning, the American Sign Language captioning. So I'm going to let them take it away as the first introduction to Jordan's Principle for those who might not have heard about it. Well, there we go. And Jordan's principle, Put Children First, is also the title of my talk this morning. If you want to advance the slide. Oh, I guess we need to advance it again. I want now to talk to you about who Jordan was and about his legacy. So if I was more techie, or if I was in a room, I might say, how many people have heard of Jordan's principle before? But since I don't know how to do that here, I'm just going to start at the beginning. And for those who might have heard it before, I thank you for your patience. So up there in the corner, we have Jordan. Jordan River Anderson was a little guy from the Norway House Cree Nation. He was born with complex medical needs, and so for the first couple of years of his life, he had to stay in the Winnipeg Children's Hospital to get the care and support he needed. At the age of 2, his medical team said that he could go home. And it was at that time that the province of Manitoba and the government of Canada started arguing over who was going to pay for that at-home care that he needed. And the only reason this argument happened at all was because Jordan was a First Nations child. And as you may know, healthcare normally funded by the province, services for First Nations normally funded by the federal government. And so both of those levels of government decided that, neither wanted to pay for the care Jordan needed. And so he actually stayed in that hospital for another 2 years, completely unnecessarily, no medical reason for him to be there, other than the fact that neither level of government wanted to fund the care that would have been provided to any other child as a matter of course. So very sadly, Jordan actually passed away at the age of 5 in that hospital, having never left, never having the chance to live in a family home. So following that, Jordan's family, and that's a picture of his dad down there, very courageously came forward and said, we don't want what happened to Jordan to happen to any other First Nations child. And the thing that you need to know is that the situation that Jordan found himself in, although particularly tragic in its outcome, in terms of him never leaving that space, was not unusual. This sort of jurisdictional dispute between federal and provincial governments happened and does continue to happen quite frequently. At the time of Jordan's passing, in 2005, a study was done that found no less than 393 other children in a situation like Jordan's, where they needed services, but neither level of government was willing to pay. So Jordan's family came forward and they said, we want to put his name to a child first principle to ensure that nothing like this happens to another child. You want to advance the slide? So in December of 2007, the House of Commons actually had a motion presented, which asked the government to support Jordan's principle, to support this idea that First Nations kids should get the help they need when they need it. That motion passed unanimously by all members of Parliament. All parties stood up and said, yes, Jordan's principle is something that we believe in. Unfortunately, almost immediately after that motion was passed, the bureaucracy of the government set about narrowing that vision, the spirit and intent of that principle, to the point that when people sought help, nobody qualified. And in fact, even though people knew that Jordan's principle had passed in the House of Commons, no one really knew what to do to access that kind of, Jordan's principle support. So Canada's failure to implement Jordan's principle, to learn from Jordan's story, became part of a human rights complaint that the organization I work for and the Assembly of First Nations had filed also in 2007. In 2016, the Canadian Human Rights Tribunal found that Canada was racially discriminating against First Nations kids by underfunding child welfare on reserve, and that's a whole other piece that we don't have time to talk about today, but also racially discriminating in their failure to implement Jordan's principle and to do things differently for First Nations kids needing help. As a result of that tribunal ruling and actually 24 additional rulings by the Canadian Human Rights Tribunal. We don't have time to talk about the whole history of the case today, but I will let you know that that case is ongoing. I think, how many years has it been now? 13, 14, 15, 16 years. We're still at the Canadian Human Rights Tribunal trying to end the discrimination and make sure that it doesn't happen again. But some progress has been made as a result of those rulings. Today, we are very happy to know that 2.56 million products, services, and supports for First Nations kids have been approved by Canada through Jordan's Principle. So all that to say, Jordan's Principle, I think, is not yet at the place that the family intended, but we are getting there, and kids are getting services and supports as a result. So for anyone in our group who is First Nations or has a First Nations child in their circle, I want to spend a little bit of time talking to you now about how you can access this support. So next slide. In doing that, I want to kind of talk about some of the things that if you have heard about Jordan's Principle, some of the things that are correct and some of the things that are not correct. So a couple of years ago, the Caring Society partnered with the Wabanaki Council on Disability to do this report. I couldn't figure out a way to get it in the slide, so here we go. This is for those who can view this. This is a report called Jordan's Principle and Children with Disabilities and Special Needs, a resource guide and analysis of Canada's implementation. So this is kind of a wordy way of saying this is a booklet that tells you about how Jordan's Principle might be able to support your family if you have a child with disability or special needs. And one of the things we found in doing this report is that people have been writing and talking about Jordan's Principle for quite a while now, but because Canada has not been doing it properly, there is some misinformation out there about what Jordan's Principle is and who it can help. So number one, people might think that Jordan's Principle only applies to health. This is not true. Jordan's Principle is based on the needs of the child. And so that includes health, of course, but also things like social needs, educational needs, recreational needs, access to culture and language supports, products such as maybe iPads or hearing assisted devices, all of these sorts of things. The question that you don't want to ask is, what does Jordan's Principle cover? Because, we're not concerned about that. What we are concerned about is, what does the child need, right? That's the question you start with. What does that child need? And that's what you put forward as the request to Canada in terms of support. One thing we do need to flag is that Jordan's Principle applies to First Nations children. So Métis and Inuit children, their families have their own set of unique needs and areas of support. But because Jordan was a First Nations child, and because Jordan's Principle emerged out of that dispute between kids on reserve and off reserve and the Indian Act, that's why it is specific to First Nations children. A big one is about normative standard. So when I say normative standard, I mean, what does the province or territory normally provide, right? And so folks might think that when I think about my child needs, what my child needs, I'm limited to what the province or territory might normally give. No, again, we're asking, what does the child need? And Canada is responsible to make a decision about that need based on substantive equality. So not what does the province or territory ordinarily provide, what does the child need? And let's meet that need, recognizing that because of colonialism, past and present, First Nations children may have particular needs that need to be met. And meeting those needs is part of reconciliation and a commitment to doing better. We sometimes hear about Jordan's Principle being a policy or a program. It is not. As a result of the tribunal's orders, it is a legal rule that Canada is legally obligated to fulfill. And with that, Jordan's Principle has no end date. So, we don't think about this is a program sunsetting in 2023, whatever. No, Jordan's principle is a legal responsibility on Canada until, maybe until the situation in this country is such that we don't need to have this particular support for kids. So next slide, please. When you are thinking about the needs of your child, the child in your circle, you should know that, we talked about this sort of thing, the misinformation that is out there about Jordan's principle. What are the things that the tribunal has said that are factual? What are the actual things we need to know about Jordan's principle? We need to know that Jordan's principle needs to be based on substantive equality, number one. Again, meaning that it doesn't matter what the provinces or territories provide, it means meeting the needs of the child. The decision by Canada needs to be in the best interest of the child. They need to be thinking about the needs, and they also need to account for distinct community circumstances. So this might mean that if I live in a remote community and there are no services for my child in that community, there might need to be funds for transportation to make sure that my child can get to where they need to go, right? Or things might cost more in the north, or, all these sorts of things that if you live outside of, the everyday urban center, sometimes are forgotten by decision makers. All of those things Canada is legally obligated to think about in determining these requests. So next slide, please. I will send the organizers these slides, so you will have them. So I'm not going to go through this entire list of things that Jordan's principle might be able to support with, or should be able to support with, I should say. And, I just said, don't worry about what Jordan's principle covers or not covers, and then I give you this list. But my idea here is to give you examples of things that other kids have said they needed, right? And so to just get you thinking about, what are the things that my child needs? If they're not on this list, it does not mean that your child is not entitled to them. It simply means that they're not on this list of examples. But, some of the things that other families have identified have ranged from anything from, adaptive furniture to educational assistance to training for families, right? So there's a whole range of things in there. Next slide. So how do we access these services? There are a few different ways, but in the interest of being as most straightforward as possible, there is a 24-hour line that you can call 365 days a year and say, I want to make a request for my child. And they will either take your request over the phone right there, or direct you to someone in your region who can assist. If you call that number and someone tries to refer you on, you do have the right to say, no, I don't want to be referred on. I want to make my request now through you. And the tribunal has also issued very specific things that Canada needs to do to honor Jordan's principle. And some of these are around the times that they need to get back to. So I'm going to be honest and tell you that Canada is not doing the best job in terms of getting back to people, making decisions within the timelines outlined here. But in saying that, these should be your expectations in terms of, how the process should go. And, you have a right, if you don't get back with a decision, hearing a decision within a certain time frame, you have the right to call back and say, hey, I'm aware that the Canadian Human Rights Tribunal said you need to make a decision about my child's request within 48 hours. And it's been 3 days. I want to hear back, right? I want to flag here about who is eligible, because this is another piece of the misinformation that I think might still be floating around. In the past, you might have heard, it's only for kids on reserve, or it's only for status Indian children. The tribunal issued a ruling setting out 4 categories of eligibility. So number 1 is if the child has status. Okay. Number 2, the child does not have status, but they have at least one parent or guardian who does. Okay, so maybe your child is non-status, but you are status. So your child is there eligible. Another one would be maybe your child is not status, but you live on reserve. So any child who lives on reserve is eligible. And the third category is, or pardon me, the fourth category is children who don't have status, or maybe their parent also doesn't have status, but they are recognized by their nation. So if someone from your band, is able to write a letter saying, hey, Jennifer's daughter is non-status, but we recognize her as a member of our community for the purposes of Jordan's principle, then Canada is obligated to accept that as eligibility, because that is part of First Nations determining our own citizenship and who belongs, right? And that's our right. So I apologize that this may be a little bit blurry. So again, I'm going to send this to you, the actual links, so that you have all of the material for yourselves. It was just me trying to find the best way to jog my memory without overwhelming my slides with all the things. So let's go on to the next one. Now, I really quickly wanted to talk about Jordan's principle and the connection to requests driven by poverty. So very quickly, I'm going to say that there was a study released last September by the Institute of Fiscal Studies and Democracy, IFSD. They looked at data being held by Indigenous Services Canada to kind of see what's happening with Jordan's principle. Is it doing what it is supposed to be doing? Who is accessing Jordan's principle? From what provinces? What are they asking for? And why? The big question is, why are these kids coming forward and needing help? Because if we knew why, maybe we can get to those root causes, right? So that kids aren't having to apply for support. It could just get to them as a matter of course, right? So if you want to go ahead to the next slide. They found a few things, many things of note actually, but for the purposes of our conversation, they found that the number of requests in the areas of health, mental health, education, and requests associated with poverty were the highest. And really to them, it suggested that kids are coming here and they're making requests for things. And that's wonderful that they're getting those services and supports. Number one, though, why aren't they able to get them through other avenues? Right? So if we're thinking about poverty and underfunding on reserve, are kids having to go through Jordan's principle to get things that might otherwise be available to kids who are non-Indigenous living in cities? And number two, the poverty piece, right? So if we go ahead to the next slide. When IFSD try to answer this question of why are kids making requests, right? Why are families coming forward with this? The only thing that they could really point to in terms of why are people coming forward, and this part of this is because that the data Indigenous Services Canada has doesn't really allow them to answer this question properly, right? So it's a data issue, one, but of the data that they had access to, the only thing that they could really look at as the driver was poverty, right? As what was causing the need for people to come forward and make these requests. So with that, I will say that Jordan's principle does provide support in terms of basic necessities. This is one of the areas when we say, what does the child need? Basic necessities such as the family needs housing support, utilities, groceries, these kinds of things. This is part of that social aspect that Jordan's principle can assist with. So I'm going to flag that for everyone here that no, Jordan's principle is not this is an area that we're working through with Canada. No, it is not a long-term, income support, but it recognizes that poverty is, in many cases, a big need for families, and a big need, pardon me, not a need, but a big issue for families. And particularly when we look at the intersection of disability and poverty, right? So I wanted to share this with you as something that is emerging as we look at Jordan's principle and how it's working to assist families. We don't know enough, but I thought it was fitting, considering the topic that we're gathered here today for. Next. Now, I know my time is pretty much up, so I did want to leave you with something that you might be interested in exploring more. And this is a free film available through the National Film Board by the very wonderful, inspirational Alyson Obamsawin, who is a celebrated First Nations filmmaker. This is a film about Jordan and his life. And she was able to find video of Jordan in the hospital with the nurses, photos, which when you think back to the time, 1999 to 2000 era, video and photos aren't as common as they are today, right? So we often get requests, do you have any pictures of Jordan? Do you have any of this? Do you have any of that? And we say, well, no, it was 1999. Like, people didn't have the sort of taking a picture of everything like we do now, but she was able to find some kind of home video type stuff that nurses had taken. And to me, it's just a really grounding reminder of what this is all for, right? To be reminded of Jordan and his story. And as I said, this film is free and available on the internet. So, I really invite all of you to check it out. And I believe that is the end of my presentation. I know that we aren't necessarily doing a Q&A, but if there are any quick questions that might have come up in the chat, I don't know if it would be appropriate for me to answer them if there's anything that might be timely or immediate. I'll look to the moderator to let me know what the questions are or if I should answer them.
I will put that right back to my amazing tech team, because I was deeply listening to you and not looking at the chat. So I'm not sure if there was anything that came up right away. The other thing we can do, Jennifer, is if there are people who have requested more information, we will certainly forward that on to you.
So how did I do for time? Terrible? Oh no,
you're great. You're great. You're all good. Today and for explaining this important legal requirement. We know there is so much to say about it, and we really appreciate the really in-depth way that you were able to sort of give us a broad overview and in a very, very limited time. So thank you so much for your time here today.
My pleasure, and I will send along those materials. Is Monday okay?
Yes, absolutely. We will, for all of you who are interested, we will send it out in a follow-up email to reach out to participants and say thank you. You're great. You're great. Don't doubt yourself.
Everyone. Enjoy the next 2 days of this really amazing, and I'm sure amazing gathering, and I'm sure you're all going to learn a lot and from each other too. So be good and enjoy your day.
Thanks, Jennifer. We're so hard on ourselves, aren't we, as humans? My goodness, that was a wonderful presentation. Next, we have a short video from Alyson Colón, who is heading the first territory-wide study in Nunavut that specifically looks at experiences of people with disabilities and their families as a research. She is a research associated, I'll breathe. She is a research associate with the Nunavummi Disabilities Makina Swatit Society. This video is a very brief overview of her ongoing research that looks at the ways in which increased costs of living are impacting families and individuals with disabilities in Nunavut. Kaya, are you able to share that?
Hello, my name is Alyson Colón. I am a researcher with Nunavumi Disabilities Makiniswatit Society in Iqaluit, Nunavut, and we also use the acronym NDMS. NDMS is the only cross-territorial disability organization in Nunavut. Our mission is to achieve independence, self-determination, and full citizenship for all Nunavummiut living with disability. I'm so glad to join Disability Without Poverty today to talk a little bit about how increased costs of living are impacting families and individuals with disability in Nunavut. So we are currently halfway through a 3-year research project funded by Accessibility Standards Canada. As part of this research, to date, we have visited 20 of Nunavut's 25 communities and spoken with over 400 participants. While this work is still underway, we wanted to share today some initial impressions from our conversations with Nunavummiut, particularly in regards to the high cost of living in the North and the impacts and pressures that this places on families and individuals living with disability. Today, I'm going to talk specifically about 4 points that stand out from the research. The first is air travel. All of Nunavut's 25 communities are fly-in communities. Nunavummiut seeking medical care beyond the scope of their local healthcare center must travel by plane to cities like Iqaluit, Winnipeg, or Ottawa. While medical travel is covered by the territorial government, leaving one's home community to see a doctor, a specialist, or to have a procedure completed puts additional financial strain on families. Families describe to us needing to take extended time off work, locate childcare or elder care while they are away, and taking on unexpected expenses. Many participants in our research also told us that medical travel is a serious source of stress for them and their families. Weather and mechanical delays, as well as administrative barriers, can result in medical appointments being scheduled and rescheduled several times over before care can be accessed. The second issue is food security and food costs. Food costs in Nunavut are notoriously high. Store-bought foods can be up to 4 times as high as the equivalent food in other areas of Canada. And according to federal data, as many as half of Nunavummiut deal with food insecurity. Many communities cited an urgent need for food banks and food programs. In addition to high prices for store-bought food, country food, or traditional foods that are hunted or fished, such as caribou, beluga, or char, have been impacted by climate change, mining, and shipping activities. As a result, hunters and fishers may have to travel farther to find foods for their families and communities, leading to increased costs for fuel and additional time and effort. Certainly, many of the people we spoke with for this project told us about the challenges they faced to feed themselves and their families, particularly when living on limited income from income support. The third issue I'd like to highlight is housing. Nunavut is currently facing a housing crisis with limited units available and high costs to rent, heat, and maintain. Participants in our study talked about struggling to find appropriate and safe housing for their families, being on waiting lists for months or years, and dealing with very high costs. Many of the individuals we spoke with mobility issues were in housing without ramps or accessible features. Local housing offices are doing their best to connect community members with accessible housing, but units are limited and in high demand. It is imperative that new housing units are built with accessibility in mind and are financially accessible for families. And the last issue is transportation. Currently, Nunavut's 25 communities do not have public transportation, and many communities do not have taxi services or other service vehicles like ambulances or wheelchair-accessible school buses. For Nunavummiut without access to vehicles, ATVs, or skidoos, transportation is limited to walking where possible. Nearly all respondents in our study cited this as a major concern. Nunavummiut experiencing barriers to mobility have few options for getting around their community, and many participants have described to us being housebound for months of the year, if not year-round. Lack of wheelchair-accessible transportation also makes medical travel very difficult. One family described having to travel all the way to Ottawa to seek medical care because there were no accessible transportation options in the territory to pick them up from the airport, take them to their hotel, and get them to their medical appointments. So these are just some initial impressions from the conversations that we've had to date. Clearly, increased supports and benefits would greatly impact Nunavummiut living with disabilities and their families, in addition to improved infrastructure. The final report for this project will be released in the spring of 2024, and we welcome anyone to follow us for updates on the project on social media at NewAbility. Thank you very much.
Wanted to thank Alyson for that video. We are very eager to hear the final report once the important research has been completed. And I wanted to especially thank Alyson for taking the time to put this video together in the midst of literally getting back from her latest trip to Pang, Nunavut. So we deeply appreciate that. Our final segment in Learning from Northern and Indigenous Experiences belongs to Symbia Barnaby, who discusses various barriers for Indigenous people to access quick, adequate, and affordable care and services. Symbia is a health, equity, and community inclusion advocate. And beyond her training as a practical nurse, she is a single mother of 6 children, 5 of whom have neurodevelopmental disabilities. She is a storyteller, a filmmaker, and a wisdom translator. And thank you so much for being here, Symbia.
Thank you for the introduction so much. So as Amanda said, I'll just introduce myself really quickly. My English name is Symbia Barnaby. My traditional Haida name is Gu Ga Jung. My spirit name is Warrior Woman. I am of Micmac and Haida descent. The pronouns that I use are she and her. I am a single parent. Many of my children have the diagnosis of autism, ADD and ADHD, and anxiety disorders. I'm also trained as a practical nurse, a birth and postpartum doula. I do a lot of activism around Indigenous issues, like missing and murdered Indigenous women. I am a storyteller. We have a documentary that we filmed as a family around intergenerational trauma and how it's impacted our lives. And part of the film also discusses some of the experiences that we had within the disability sector within our community. Next slide, please. So I wanted to just share really briefly a little bit about our journey, and then we'll go into some of the barriers. So with my oldest child who was diagnosed with autism, the whole process had taken about 3 years from the beginning when we were saying, okay, we're noticing lots of things that are happening at the school's calling us, come and pick up your kiddo. You know, your kiddo's hidden in the school, your kid's crumpling paper. So some reactive behaviors were starting to happen. We had noticed many things long before we got to that place, but we didn't have any direction as to where to go or what kind of assistance that we needed to have. So I had approached my doctor and said, hey, you know, I have a little bit of a worry here. These are some of the things that are happening. And at the time I was doing nursing, my nursing school. So there was talks about neurodevelopmental disability. So it had come up as a subject. And I thought, wow, this is how my child is. There's many of these behaviors, many of the things that are presenting looks very similar how my child is. So we brought it forward, and from seeing the pediatrician to finally getting a diagnosis took 3 years. There was a constant turnover. So I live in northern BC. We're very close, like it's the last stop before you can go to Alaska. So where we are, there's a key, there was turnovers of key positions like the child and youth support needs, now that's what they call it, and other people that were submit to be able to help people come into the Ministry of Children and Family services into that queue, and through the healthcare system and through the education system. There was lack of cultural awareness. So a lot of different places that we went when we're asking for support didn't understand some of the key things throughout history that would cause some apprehension on an Indigenous family's part coming forward to access services. So in BC, the way that you access support services for a child who has autism is it has to go through the Ministry of Children and Family Services through the province, which a lot of people don't understand is a different branch than child protection. A lot of people lump them together and don't know that there's different services that they are able to offer. So there was a lack of cultural awareness. We had repeatedly asked for respite. We didn't qualify for it. We needed a diagnosis prior to doing that. Instead, what the social workers that were connected to us at the time offered was a voluntary care agreement. So instead of saying, hey, we will find respite people to do respite with you, and we will try to help, figure funding or help you with programs, provincial programs or local programs, they said, sign your child over to us, or your children over to us, and we'll take care of it with a foster parent instead. So the oldest one was diagnosed at 10 years old. So there was a big gap of missed opportunities when it came to early intervention. One of the things that we were able to do as parents, so me and one of the other parents, we ended up opening up a Facebook page, our group, and invited other parents that we knew that were also dealing with similar situations. And we band together and we invited behavior interventionists from the Greater Vancouver area to come up. And she basically did a circuit with our children and some of the other children in the nearby villages. So where I live, there are 5 different First Nations villages that spill into our community that use our services. So we're considered urban to them, but to the rest of the province, we're considered a northern remote community. So the province, the province, the feds, or locally, nobody had taken initiative on how to get services to be able to be provided from our community. We as parents came together and figured this kind of a solution out. It was short-lived. This person was able to come because her husband was riding a circuit doing radiology, so he would come up once a month. So she was able to come at the same time with him because he had his travel provided. So there's literally no local services for children with support needs. We struggled to keep a speech and language pathologist in our community, an occupational therapist, and the ones that we did have were only included in the healthcare system and were for pediatrics. So it was 5 years old and under. So anything outside of that, it was on a parent to, one, know what they did, find and secure them, and be able to afford to pay for them and figure out remote services. Not like now where we have Zoom everything, but that was one of a big barrier. The closest place for us to have the assessment, because I live in Prince Rupert, so northern BC, the closest place is about a 9-hour drive from here in Prince George. Unless they made clinics, unless they gathered people together and did like what we did. This led to huge parent burnout and stress. We had other stressors going on. I had a very complicated last birth, 6 kids under 10 and 3 or 4 of them showing signs of having ASD. It was a lot going on and no direction, no help. And a huge apprehension on our part going forward, trying to ask for support services. And it actually, we ended up having family violence happen and complete breakdown of our family. And then we had child apprehension and family or ministry involvement with our family. Not because our children were injured in any way, but they were worried about my mental health after the assault that had happened. So huge. I was listening to what Jennifer was saying earlier, and she was talking about poverty. People don't understand, if we have to go and travel like a 9-hour trip, and we have 6 children, we have 5 children that still have to be taken care of, right? Or we have to bring all of them. So how much does that cost for us to leave here and go to a 9-hour drive to go and get an assessment done, right? We get calls from the school because our schools are understaffed and our children are under-supported because we can't keep people in those positions. What happens, right? I had a nursing job that I had, a full-time nursing job, and would get called all the time, come home, come home, come home. We can't find your kid. We've had the police actually have to go and find our child because they were an elopement risk and they couldn't find them. And so think of all the ways that we could make money, but we're not able to because we're getting called away, right? A lot of our time had to be spent being at the beck and call of the school and being able to be there for our children. Next slide. So I wanted to make sure that I spelled a lot of these out. I feel like some of them were touched on. So this is the province that I live in, is in BC. And you can see this, the map on the side here is of all the different First Nations communities. And you can look throughout that map, how many are northern remote communities or rural remote communities, right? Most of them. So when we're looking at barriers for Indigenous people, we look at proximity. How close is it to services? Right? So if I'm talking about having to go 9 hours away to go and get an assessment, is that feasible to be able to go, or having to access those kind of services on a regular basis? No. And is it fair? No. Is it equitable? No. The next one is accessibility. We're looking at languages. Are some of the resources written in the languages of the people whose land that these services are provided on? Is it plain language, right? How many of us have gone into hospital and have found booklets, and the booklets is, medical jargon or language that is just over and above like plain language, right? That can create a big barrier. Not every Indigenous family is led by a mom and a dad. Sometimes our children are being cared for by grandparents, or aunties or uncles or foster parents or older siblings. It's not always a mom and a dad, and it's not always people who have an education further than a handful of years. My dad has stepped in many times and helped out. He has like an 8th grade education. Some of them have like 3rd grade education because they went off to work instead, or went to residential school and then went home and then didn't have connection to school afterwards, right? The next one is availability. So like I said, in our community, there aren't even these resources available in our community in the first place. That can be a big barrier. If you need a speech and language pathologist in your community and your community is 75 people and it's a ferry ride away, 4-hour ferry ride away, how easy is it? The availability is not in your community. You have to leave in order to be able to access it. First ability, anything that falls outside of what's covered by the province can be a huge gap. Look at massage therapy. My brain's too tired to think of all the extras that we might be looking at. Sometimes if your child doesn't have the right diagnosis, they don't have funding that's attached to them either, right? So a kid with ADD and ADHD that needs a behavior interventionist because they have reactive behaviors, how is a family able to afford to pay for a behavior interventionist if there isn't funding attached to a program for that diagnosis? If it's based simply on a diagnosis and what's attached to it, right? That family has to come out of pocket or they go without. The last two are really, really important ones to share is around colonization. So it was kind of briefly touched on with a person who opened when it comes about perception and values and belief systems. So the idea of disability, there isn't a word for disability in our language. And I do research on a bunch of different research projects. And this is what I found so far. It's a lot of the time within our languages, what was used was a description of their gift. So if they were somebody who saw, that was the word that they used for that person. If somebody was a big feeler, that would be the description of that person. So it was more around gifting and not about disability. When we look at it, how is it that we have to convince people to use services if the belief system doesn't match, right? If we don't see the concept of disability and we see it through the lens of gifts, does that make sense without somebody completely breaking down why or what the value of that service is, right? So value systems being incongruent. The history of child welfare system and child apprehension. Currently, there are more children in the child welfare system. This has been said repeatedly. There's more Indigenous children in the child welfare system than there ever was at the height of residential schools. Indigenous children make up about 7%, so 0 to 14, they make up 7% of the Canadian population, and they make up over 50% of the kids that are in the child welfare system. Indian hospitals, and residential schools. So there's a big mistrust with Indigenous people and systems and the things that are provided through those systems because of history, which makes a huge barrier going forward to try and access those, because it leads to a lack of awareness on those systems parts. And then the last one there is to racism, right? So racism on an interpersonal, institutional, and a systemic level. So there is a big difference. I'll leave this one of the last thoughts I'll say is that there's a big difference between intention and impact. Some of these systems may not have any intention to treat our people with racism, but lack of cultural awareness, a lack of cultural humility, a lack of cultural competency translates to Indigenous people receiving that any of their behavior as racism. We endure it as racism. So that's those are the barriers that I would say that our family and most other Indigenous people are enduring when we are trying to access disability services for our family. Next slide. I think there might be one more. Oh no, I think that's 3. Sorry. I know I talked really fast. I was trying to keep within the time limit that and because we do, like I said, we do have the documentary. I'll say this really quickly. If you want to look up, setting up a viewing of it, you can look me up on social media. It's just Symbia Barnaby with Instagram and Facebook. We have a website called healingnationfilm.ca. But like I said, you can get connected with me. And if you had any questions, you can always follow up with me after. And thank you very much, Alyson, for having me here.
Symbia, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and your lived experience. Each of you speakers could, I wish we had a day just for you. There's so much there. And in particular, what really resonated for me was that parental barrier to work and imagine what we could do and imagine what we could do for this country if we had the time and the ability to go to work while we knew that our children were being cared for safely and properly. So thank you, and we will make sure that people have access to your links and to be able to reach out to you.